Hello and welcome to season 2, episode 2 of Everything I Did Wrong as a Church Planter, a million-part series. My name is Logan Wolf. I'm in Provo, Utah. I'm joined by my friend Isaac Morin. He's out in Orange County, California. Isaac, I feel like at this point, I don't need to kind of keep giving that same introductory spiel of how we started and where we're at and all that. I think we're gonna jump in here. I do want to note this is a special day for us in Utah. Today, May 12th, is the day we're recording this. This marks 12 years as missionaries, as church planters in the state of Utah. So, and I'm celebrating it by having a conversation with you, Isaac. Isn't that great?
I love that. I'm a little bitter that we didn't address this in March 13th.
When you were celebrating 12 years? Well,
I was celebrating 12 years.
At that point, you hadn't been on much. I wasn't sure if I was ever going to have you on again. I didn't want to create like emotional entanglements for the audience of like, oh, what about that Isaac guy? Like, he's gone. I'm sick of him. I'm sick of his mess.
He's dead to me.
He's dead to me.
He doesn't pay for therapy. It's embarrassing. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh. No, it's fine. It's fine. No, it's been good having you on, Isaac. I have reached out to several others and it's just a scheduling issue. I know you and I both know church planters who have been, again, I'm not talking about guys that have been on the field for months or just a couple of years, but guys that have been on the field for, more than a decade, like you and I. I know some of them even listen to this and are resonating with this. So I do want to, I am trying to get some other voices on here to join. If not both of us, just something like that. Awesome. But anyway, hopefully here in season 2 we'll pull some more of those together. In fact, if you're listening to this and you are a church planter or a church planter who's been on the field maybe close to a decade or over a decade, please reach out to us, either of us, and let us know. We'd love to have a conversation either about some stuff we've already talked about or even some of these topics we have coming up. So in this episode, here is the error, the mistake. We are talking about that season after having arrived in the cities where we're going to plant these churches. And for me, again, Provo, Utah, you're in California. But the mistake is this: I started too quickly. Is that the best way to word it? I started too quickly.
Yeah. Hitting the ground running. That's definitely a huge error we want to.
Okay. So, and I think the best way to do it, brother, is we'll just let's just take as much time as you need. Let's just hash out the timeline between arriving, what day was that, to what was the day that you actually had public weekly services. So granted, I know both of us probably did some stuff in between where we were connecting with people or trying to pull some people together. And we can talk about that maybe even in a later episode, like preview services or outreach events. But just what was your timeline? Walk us through it and why, we'll the whys of some of that stuff, and then we'll dissect it.
Yeah. So May of 2010, we left the ministry we were at. And in March of 2011, we had our grand opening service. So fundraising, communication, ordering, logo design, web design, bank account, all the stuff that you would do from an administrative standpoint, and then moving back across the country to California, and then opening the churches. And when we got to California, so we took a month and went and saw family back east before we started. So when I'm talking about moving across the country, that's what I mean. But really the move to plant was more from just above LA, down to Orange County. That wasn't really too huge of a move, but we got in Orange County in January, like January 1, we moved into our new house. And I don't mean moved into our new house like, started living there. It was like we went to the storage unit and started unpacking on January 1st. Grand opening Sunday was March 13th, I think. Whatever time change Sunday was that year, that was in our infinite wisdom, that was the Sunday we decided to have the grand opening. And you talk about just hitting the ground running. There were so many, we knew no one in the city. We had a situation where we had to move locations. That's a whole nother story I won't get into now, but we canvassed an entire portion of the city. I mean, in those 3 months, it was just crazy. So in
So
90 days,
I'm about to say that's what it was. It was just over, like right at 90 days then, right? You're unpacking, you're
Yep.
launching 3 months.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
And this was at a time where get to know you meetings and preview services were certainly a thing with, I think, other church plants, but where we were planting out of, this was it was sort of a new concept. So the prevailing idea for us was to do what we were going to do. The 90 days was plenty of time. You just go to the city, start knocking doors, open a church. That was the prevailing mentality. So I know for some people listening to that, they're like, that's dumb.
Yeah.
And really dumb. And I'm going to echo that with you, but understand,
bro, I lived it and it's dumb. I lived it and it's dumb.
It's still dumb. But it was sort of the prevailing thought at that time in regards to church planning for where we were coming from. So yeah, 90 days, man, it was nuts. Really less than, but yeah.
Well, okay. So for us, we moved May 12th, 2011, and we launched it's like the first or second week September. I don't have it in front of me. Of 2011. So about 4 months, give or take. In fact, I was looking here to see if I could find that date. About 4 months is what we were doing. We launched. Okay. It was almost. It was September 25th, 2011. So 4.5 months. Same thing though. We moved from North Carolina. It was the most. I don't know. I mean, I'm looking back on it. So we had this like commissioning service in Goldsboro, North Carolina at our sending agency. And, we're leaving, like, we don't know, just like you, I don't know anyone in Provo. We don't have anyone waiting on us or anything. We have this commissioning service. We say goodbye to our parents in the parking lot. We're out there like weeping, everyone's on their way to McDonald's. Like, it's just dumb. Like, it's like, it felt so anticlimactic. Like, it's like, what is happening? We get up the next morning, early flight out of Raleigh into Salt Lake City. We were going to ship our car with all of our stuff, and that which is delayed on the road. So we actually arrived 2 weeks before our stuff. Whoa. So we rented a car at the airport, drove to Provo, and our landlord was, I guess one person was waiting for us because we had to give him money. So he was there and takes us into the apartment, the condo, empty. And we closed the door and we literally sat on the ground and just cried. Like what do we do? We ended up having to go to like Walmart and bought an air mattress and some paper goods or whatever because we didn't have anything to sleep on, some sheets. Luckily, In-N-Out was like right up the road. So for like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, those first 2 weeks, we were just eating In-N-Out. I gained like 50 pounds. So it was crazy, man.
Not a good 50 pounds either.
Yeah, no, just like church planting. But we did hit the ground running. So those 2 weeks, even not having our stuff, I did like have my laptop and stuff. We were doing things. So we were looking up like community events to participate in. We were mapping out where we're going to canvas. And basically that summer, that's what we did. I spent all my time, and this is probably a topic for another episode, like formally organizing a legal entity that was a church, the 501c3 and actually there's a lot of stuff I didn't have to do needlessly. And so again, I wish I had go back to that coaching episode we did just last time. I wish I had someone walking me through that stuff. Did that and we had several mission teams come, and I'm sure we have some stories around that, but we're utilizing the mission teams over that summer to help us canvas the whole city, which we did. So we ended up going taking something to every door. Hindsight, that was a lot of I should have just been sharing the gospel there, but we were inviting people to these. We did preview services, so that's probably a difference in our stories. But it's funny because I had those two different books. I had Muchler's book and Cersei's book. Muchler very much go to the city, knock doors, start a church. Yep. And Cersei more the invite people to these preview services in anticipation of a launch, a few months down the road. Yep. So, but we were doing the preview services. We were at community events. I mean, so we moved in May and June. We had a booth at the farmers market passing out church invitations and Bibles. Not any attraction or anything. We weren't getting any ground. We did a preview service June, July, and August. One a month. We had already rented this conference center. No one shows up at those preview services, which is
Shocking.
foreshadowing. Yeah, I know. Like no, and like it was just no, dude, it was like because we're by that point we did take the summer, we were advertising, we were spending money on advertising, we were doing servant evangelism stuff, we were canvassing the city, we were at booths at all these different, farmers market, women's expo, we joined the Chamber of Commerce, we all this stuff for exposure. No one came to any of those preview services, and then of course we launched. And so like you, it's very much, it felt like I couldn't catch my breath, like we hit the ground running, and by the time the grand opening service, the launch service came, we were already exhausted. So isn't that crazy?
Dude, yeah, I resonate with so much of what you're saying, because it was the same, and obviously the toll is like most felt, I think, and this might even be, you talk about the mental stress toll of church planning. That might be a whole nother episode to dig into a little bit, but I do think that obviously your family in church planning technically really should be like one of your biggest, apart from the Holy Spirit, right? And the word, like your family is such a tremendous value add to you. Kids, who doesn't talk to guys with kids, like they're such a great piece of the puzzle, so to speak. They're a great tool, and they're there obviously because they love you and they believe in what you're doing. But
your kids, well, also because they're little and they have no choice. Like
yeah. I don't know if my kids will have the drug problem, illustration, but maybe
they will. Yeah,
but it's really more the train wreck that happens to them in the midst of all of this. You're called and you've got visions of grandeur, and but then you are just dragging your family through this 90-day process of something that could honestly, there's really no rush, and I think that's the driving point, I think, today, right? It's just
there is no rush.
Yeah, slow down. There's no rush. Like trees take time to grow, right? I mean, that's really the farming illustration here is very relevant, and the consequence. I mean, if you you could almost say like this podcast, right? The million part episode. I mean, a lot of those things that were done as mistakes really were exacerbated or actually caused by this, like the rushing, this, yes, people need to see me making disciples. They need to see me producing. They need to see me get to this number. And that could even go back into the fundraising, conversation where it's like, let's talk about what are your expectations of me as an investor,
Okay. And so let's stop there, because I agree. I think there is no need to rush. And so I would like to say that my rush was zeal, like excitement and zeal to get started. And there probably was some of that. I mean, I've been trying to I shared this. I've been trying to come to Utah since I was 16. Like there was very much like, I'm here, we're doing it. But I think underneath that was a fear of man and letting, what is their expectation of me, and trying to like meet that expectation, which is crazy because it was never communicated. And I think I said that when we talked about sending agencies. And so you're shooting for something totally ambiguous. And it's like, people have given me money and they prayed, and they know we're here now. Like they know I'm here. So I've got to do something. And who of course we didn't have kids when we moved. Who hurt in that, I think, was my wife. In fact, my wife went through that first year, that whole year, she went through some depression. I mean, and I slipped in some dark places too, but it was just running and running and running. And so I think it would be helpful to point back to that at the outset. What is the expectation on me? And to be honest, I seriously doubt, the single mom or the elderly couple or the Sunday school class, the teen Sunday school class that gave you $40, $50, $100. I doubt they're at home looking at the calendar and the watch going, they better be cranking things out now. I think, I don't think that the individuals giving had that kind of expectation on us. It's self-imposed. Someone told me once, no one's thinking about you as much as you're thinking about you.
Yes.
And so, once you left those fundraising services, once we left that commission, I bet you 90% of the people didn't give us a second thought, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And so, but you come in with that and you feel like I've got, and I'm thinking I've got to write a newsletter and I've got to like, what do I want to put in the newsletter? And that's another topic too. That whole, first season, there was nothing to write in the newsletter. So you like had to just stir up activity. Like no one's gotten saved. There wasn't a service yet. And
Yep.
so it's just like, I'm doing this, and this, and I was exhausted. So does that make sense?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, we have, my church I grew up in, they still send us some money and really that financial investment is contingent, on a letter coming. And that's fine. Right. I mean, I have no
Is it?
problem with that, but
Okay. Okay.
I mean, yeah. Right. I mean, look, if I were giving someone money, I would want to know how it's going.
Right. I want
Now,
communication.
having said that, with my experience, I would probably, and I think you see this in scripture. I think really the sending is the how would I put that? Like they seem to be the initiator of the, hey, how's it going out there? Right. Like they seem to be the one that are extending help and offering communication to the plant. And it's not one way either way, but and I don't want to go too far down this as a rabbit hole. I'm just saying, if I'm giving someone money, yeah, I want to know how it's going. But I do think we have to take a step back and recognize that guy on the ground, or those guys on the ground that are starting this, they really shouldn't be bothered with that sort of administrative stuff, and surely in the 2000s at this point, church planners don't need to be hassling with that stuff. I'm not saying not communicate, not celebrate, not give feedback, but this idea of a monthly support letter updated every 4 weeks, it puts an undue amount of pressure. And that's for sure. That could be a whole nother episode about how we do that and what that should look like.
And I think that's something worth unpacking. But that was it. I was running like, it's it. You're running like, people want to know what's happening.
And it becomes cyclical, right? Because I've got to communicate things that are good because I think that's what I'm here to do. Yeah. And if I don't have something to talk about, that's bad. And so I instinctively begin to think of things to put on the calendar that demonstrate our busyness, not necessarily our fruitfulness.
Right.
And then there's that whole other segment of busyness leads to fruitfulness, which is, I mean, the cognitive dissonance of that idea is baffling to me at this point now. But obviously, sowing leads to reaping. But let's not pretend all sowing leads to all reaping either, right? So, anyways, yeah, it just becomes very cyclical, or at least it did for us. It was like I put more stuff on the calendar,
right,
because I wanted to talk about it. And
that's just it. I mean, we slammed our calendar. Like that summer, we had. That first summer, those 4 months, we had 5 mission teams here that stayed for a week or just a little over a week. So, I mean, a lot of time we had community events every month, the farmers market once a month, and at least 1 or 2 others, and then the canvassing and the servant evangelism stuff. So, like, there was very little downtime. And again, I think at least for us, because we were coming from the Bible Belt to Utah, we're coming from North Carolina to Utah. Like there is a completely different culture. You're in a brand new city you've never lived in before. Like we were, we had our grand opening service. We were still getting lost driving around town. Like, so it's there's this like, there should have been a season, and we should have again. The mistake was I didn't do this. I wish I had just given us even a year and said, let's just get acclimated. Let's find, what's the grocery store we're going to go to? Yes. What's our favorite new restaurants? What, let's meet some neighbors. And instead of like, cause we didn't even meet we introduced ourselves to our neighbors, but there was no time even to like pour in with anyone. Cause we were out, like it was stupid. And so I think it would, I wish Utah here. I mean, it's like, you've got the beaches and stuff in California. We've got the mountains. Like it would have been great just to enjoy the new community, and go explore and go hike and go. And we didn't do it.
Yeah. And so, I think maybe pivoting to more solution-based, stuff here. I think that, there is no rush, you could definitely learn from foreign missionaries on this, because I think they understand very well the tension of, we came here for a reason, but we cannot rush this process. And some of that's done for them, right? You got language school, you've got cultural adaptations that are happening. You've got just and right, all that's connected to the ability to even start sharing the gospel once you're there. If you're going into some like raw, unreached, people groups like 1040 window, Southeast Asia, where you're the white dude in the village, right? And so, but in America, we, because there's not a lot of cultural climatization that we think we have, we either ignore that, or we don't really understand the value of kind of putting limitations on our own speed.
Yeah.
And so whenever we have this rush mentality, so many things get overlooked, things don't get prayed for, things don't get fasted for.
Yep.
We misapply the current resources that are already given us. Like that mission team, like that's awesome, man. Like we didn't have mission teams. We had groups of people from churches that came and helped canvas. And I don't know, was that similar to what they did, or did they actually come out and like offer you guys some aids in discipleship?
See, no, and that's hindsight. We could have utilized them better. They were coming specifically to help for those preview services and for the grand opening service. So they were doing outreach and evangelism type stuff with the canvassing, all that. One of the teams was at the preview service. So when I say no one was there was a bunch of out of state teenagers there. But they were helping us gear up to that. I would have utilized them a little differently now.
Yes.
But yeah, we had, but there was no space. I like there was no space to even like, we didn't even give much thought to where we were starting. We just found the place to rent for the services. Like there was no getting to know the city before we had rented the space. There was no getting to know the city before we were spending advertising dollars, before we were picking locations for outreach. I mean, it's still America, but it's not home. So it's all new, right? It was a brand new place. It's home now, but it was a brand new place then. And you have no clue what's going on.
Yep.
And so
giving that time to understanding where you now live is incredibly valuable, because Utah is not like a super liberal state, right? I mean, it would mirror at that time, North Carolina, probably maybe at a level like politically, and the types of interests that people are doing, between the two. But obviously there's lots of mountains in Utah that are not in North Carolina. And so, and the people that are in Utah are obviously different from the people in North Carolina. And so there does need to be space in anywhere you didn't grow up and you're going to plant a church. I don't care if it's 60 miles from you in the same state. There needs to be some time for some cultural adaptation for you to just kind of soak in and at least be able to think about the people you're engaging with, the people that you're meeting, the conversations you're having, to kind of distill that down into your contextual approach to apply the gospel. That needs to happen, bar none. But I think even more importantly is this idea where giving yourself like a good long runway before you take off to find out where you fit a little bit in that community. Like, what are the hobbies that might interest you in that new area? What are your favorite restaurants that you like to go eat? What sports clubs are available to you for your children? Because ministry moves at the speed of relationships. Mm-hmm. And that was a huge error on our part, because like you, we had no time to get to know anyone in the community. And now, we've got block parties rolling in our neighborhood that we use to pray for people. We've got sports clubs. I'm a part of coaching, leading kids in prayer before practices, after games. I mean, and this isn't pushy. It's just us being us. I mean, I go to the gun range and practice tactics with a solid group of cops and stuff in the area now. And they all know what I do. They know I'm available. Like, and some of that's just 12 years, right? I mean, you're not going to be able to replicate that in 9 months or 18 months or 12 months, but you can get started. in that, if you're not binding yourself to this, like, we've got to go, we got to go, we got to go, we got to go.
Well, and see, and that's the thing with no space, because I'm even thinking back at our grand opening service. There was no one local that I knew personally at our grand opening service.
Yeah.
Like I didn't make, isn't that stupid? I didn't have any space. Like I didn't like a neighbor or someone, a friend that I've developed this friendship and we've been doing stuff together and get another, like no one I knew.
And this will trip you out too. Like, again, the speed of stuff, right? And this was probably connected to a few other things, but we had probably, we had 65 on our grand opening Sunday. And I would probably say close to 15 of those people were from other churches in the area. And they just wanted to see, like, and one guy told me this. He said, I just wanted to see if the gospel was being shared. So he was a part of a church, loves Jesus, heard of a new church, came to just see if the gospel was going to be shared. And of course it was. But what an incredible opportunity it would have been to maybe mobilize this guy towards movement, or some of those families towards movement with a simple follow-up. But because we were just moving at such a rapid pace, that thought never even occurred to me when I was in that conversation, like leveraging this as an opportunity to engage, these Christians in our area that maybe God would call them in some sort of gospel partnership with us. And that's connected to a lot of other stuff when we were planting. But I do think this time-bound issue maybe exasperated, that mix.
Well, and again, just the brevity, I think, just squeezes that stuff out, because Provo's the least reached metro in America. There's not a ton of churches here. There was fewer when I moved here 12 years ago.
Yeah,
I did initially, before moving, reach out to the handful of churches. I only heard back from, I think, one or two brothers, but I didn't. When I moved here, I hardly got any time with. Again, I feel like that it would have been beneficial to have connected for my sake. And they were nearby, but have met them in person, I guess would have been beneficial. I didn't. Like, I talked to them on the phone once. We didn't know them. And for my wife's sake, for our family's spiritual well-being and health. Yes. And I think that was to our detriment. And that goes back to this. We could have really tried to, again, it needed to be reciprocated, but we could have tried to foster some partnership in the kingdom, some community there between churches, instead of just kind of being siloed off and us versus them kind of mentality, which is something I wrestled with up through years of just anyone that came was a threat. And I think I started poorly in that way. But I also think it's significant. Like, this is a big deal for your family. You already said it. Like, and I wish I had just taken time to like enjoy it and celebrate it. Like, let's start new traditions. Let's really explore and have fun. And now my family, we mark May 12th. We call it Move to Utah Day. We try to be a little more intentional in celebrating it for just the sake of family tradition. But in the throes,
great idea.
It was a missed opportunity to really just kind of revel in, wow, this was years in God bringing us this direction. For me, since I was 16, this is hundreds of people giving thousands of dollars. This is hundreds of churches who prayed for this. We're here. Let's just sit in it for a minute. And instead we blew right through it. So
and I think you just, sometimes a little bit of that might be a little bit of I don't want to use the word PTS because that seems silly, but just this correlation of like teaching from the parable of the talents and the stewards that can be exacerbated to say something it's not really saying, which is unfortunate. But either way, at the end of the day, you're at the helm of the ship, and you should be able to and should make calls like that where you recognize hey, this is, and look, the other thing too, right, is that a part of that, because you said too, we'd love to pretend, or at least maybe I would like to pretend that I was just really looking to reach people for Jesus. And certainly that was a part of it, but really the fear was really what was driving a lot of that frivolous activity, unthought through activity. Instead of recognizing these are investments from people who believe in me and they believe in the mission that we're on. They trust me, which is why they are giving me money. And they also trust me to make good decisions. Like, why would anybody send us thousands of dollars a month if they thought we were going to waste their money?
Right.
They just would not do that.
Like, they've already have said, I believe in what you and what you're doing.
Yes.
So then, but then you arrive and feel like you've got to justify it or prove it. Like, they've already given it to you. Like, you already have it. Like, I've got money in hand, you know?
Yeah.
And then to feel like I've got to somehow justify this to them, and they've already made the investment.
I feel like there's a salvation application there.
Coming to a sermon near you.
Yes. Yeah, it's
yeah.
so true. You know, just recognize that you being busy for the sake of busy is bad for you. It really is, right? It's just bad for you. And there's lots of books out there that are touching on this now, where your energy level fuels your productivity. And if you are redlining all the time, you're actually worse for yourself from a productivity standpoint. And that day at the beach would be good for you, or that day in the mountains would be good for you, or that day on the dojo would be good for you. That day at the range would be good for you. And no one back in the supply and logistics area that's funding you is going to look at some post of you doing something like that and think, why aren't they in the neighborhoods knocking doors? You know, like nobody's thinking that way. You know why? Because they're probably not.
Well, and that's maybe something to consider is, like, everyone takes some kind of time off, does something leisurely from time to time, has a vacation, whatever, watches a movie, so it's not, the fact that you're doing that is not like, no one's looking at you thinking you should be 24/7, 7 days a week cranking it out.
That's your own stuff.
Yeah,
that is your own
fine.
Those are your own demons, you know, that are walking around.
And that probably goes to, there's probably some identity issue in that. You're finding value and identity in I'm a church planter, I'm a pastor, I'm a missionary, whatever, in the work, instead of my identity being in Christ. Like, if I came here, we went at it for that first summer, and when anyone showed up at the grand opening service, if we had just quit, I mean, Jesus ain't going to love me any less.
Right.
I mean, just not. So it's like, I'm not a failure in that, in Jesus's eyes. But anyway, I think, so let's say this, no matter what your methodology is, so mobile church, launch service, micro churches, house church, or whatever, multi-site, any of this, this idea of taking space leading up to some kind of public push, public launch, public service, whatever your methodology requires, I would say it's across the board. Like, there's nothing, you can take space to get acclimated, to figure out your surroundings, to better pray and contextualize what you're about to do, to meet people. And I mean, I would recommend that to anyone. The time you roll in to the time you start, I would take more time than that. Whatever you're planning, take more time. Go ahead.
There's a great triangle. You probably heard of this. I heard this through Carrie Schmidt at one point, and it was a great thought. Like, you have this triangle of time, creativity, and money. And in whatever direction that begins to, like, if you have more time, you have less money, but you might have more creativity. And they're all kind of inverse in the way that they relate, So when you're short on time, you have to have a surplus of creativity or money. And if you have a lot of money, you don't always have to be too creative, and you don't need a lot of time. And if you don't have a lot of money, then you really got to be heavy on the creativity or the time, right?
Yeah.
And so just recognizing, to your point, whatever model you're pursuing here, recognize those three are related, and time's on there for a reason, because you might have this really big grand opening idea that you want to do, but is 3 months enough to do that?
Yeah. I wish, because I think the more time you take to kind of figure things out, it will speak to that. You're right. Our grand opening service was awful. Like, it looked awful. Like, looking back on it now, I'm embarrassed by it. Like, it was terrible. But we were rushed. I mean, there's no time put into it because we were cranking things out. So there is the time does let you either prepare more adequately, or as you're getting, I would think maybe even if we had been trying to contextualize and become acclimated a little more, we might have tweaked to some of the stuff we were doing, even as a lot, what it looked like altogether, or even some of the methods. So there would have been space to learn the area a little more. But you're right, time is a big component of what you do, and you can't
100%.
do something. Yeah, that's awesome. I tell you what, because we could talk about how we kind of prepared for those preview services and the grand opening service. I know we both did outreach and canvassing and teams, and there's a lot I would do different looking back, but I think that's probably what we need to pick up on, because I'm looking here.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, now I could definitely make some recommendations on, so let's just say I kept the timeline the same, right?
Yeah.
I would change the way that launch service looked, and certainly it would probably be pushed down the road a little bit, but whatever the amount of time because I'm sure there's somebody here and you're already in your city, and
right.
your plant date, your launch date is maybe 90 days from now. And I don't want that guy kicking himself, because
well, let me say this though, before you continue that thought.
Yeah.
If you have already started promoting it and advertising it, and say it's a couple months out, but there's no, it hasn't happened yet.
That's right.
So if you're going to change things, like now's better than waiting and starting it and realizing I started too soon. It's okay. No one's looking. I would say that very few people are grabbing attraction at 2 or 3 months out, versus if you were trying to do it, like you said, the week of, you might be up the creek. But if you're, I think you've probably got some time to adjust your calendar if you're that far out. But anyway, Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just think getting yourself around people, not in a preview service, stop with the official, the hosted stuff, because that's not making disciples. I mean, certainly people put their faith in large gatherings and events serve a purpose and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not saying don't do anything like that. I'm just saying, when you're getting to the city, your primary mission, if you're going to launch a church, whether this is a traditional model, micro house, whatever, your mission is people, So just find places that you can begin to meet people and do something scripturally related. And I'm a big proponent now of, I don't care what you do, as long as it's connected to vision, it has some sort of accountability built in, and it has some sort of goal setting to be a part of it. Those 3 things catalyze growth and health in Christians, and we need them. And whatever it is, this could be in a park, this could be at a coffee shop, this could be at a range, this could be on a dojo. I mean, you could do this anywhere.
A dojo.
Sports, and the door to a launch service or a house launch, that is such an easy door to open, because you have catalyzed around scripture Christians into movement, not just a event of a service, and not just the starting of something. You have now coalesced people around scripture that's moving them towards obeying Jesus, following Jesus, and being healthy in their Christian life.
Yeah.
And that's really the requirement of bearing fruit, right? Love God, love people, and God says, I'll give you fruit.
Yeah.
And so I think, whether it's 90 days, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, that is what I would recommend someone spend the majority of their time doing. Get a healthy rhythm for your family, get settled in, and start meeting people where it makes sense for you to meet people. Maybe you're not a coffee guy, who cares? Maybe you're not a gun guy, who cares? Maybe you're not a jiu-jitsu guy, who cares?
Are you a jiu-jitsu guy? Are you a jiu-jitsu guy?
I like jiu-jitsu. Yeah, I do.
I'm learning things about you, bro.
I'm sorry.
I'm learning.
Yeah, all things lethal.
No, I think that's, and again, this might be a good spot to kind of tie a bow on this topic, because there's elements of what was happening during those months that we could delve into a little more. But I just want to recap this. There is no rush.
Yeah.
So we said that there's no rush, and just search your own heart. I mean, ask God to search your heart. Am I rushing because of fear? Am I rushing because of pride? What is the rush? Because of, and maybe that's a good opportunity to have some conversations with your sending agency or your home church about expectations. Maybe it's your donors about expectations. Hey, thank you so much for investing. I know that I'm going to take 6, 8, 12 months before we actually launch. There's going to be some time where I'm just kind of acclimating and getting settled in. I think that's great. It's also don't drag your family at a breakneck speed. You just mentioned healthy rhythms with your family. Yeah, this is a big deal. Like you're moving to enjoy it. You're moving to a new city, a new state, possibly. Man, get to know the area and make it fun for your wife and kids. Like enjoy that new time together. No one's going to fault you for it. And if someone faults you for having a good time with your wife and then you don't get that. Go take your $20 a month or whatever it is and get out of here. I don't need that mess in my life. But then also, just some spiritual rhythms that would involve meeting people. One, like getting to places where we're around people, and not just this. Again, we both talked about breakneck speed, canvassing and events where you don't know those people. Those are strangers. And then, but actually get into some relationships and then invite them into some prayer or some time in the Word. Like just begin to. Let's just have let's start begin to, what's it look like to follow Jesus? Let's learn this together. Let's pray together. How can we, I think that would be tremendous, man. Those kind of 3 takeaways. We can pick up when this next conversation, maybe about some of the outreach and canvassing mission team, some of the stuff that was happening again, leading up to, because there's a lot I would do differently there. But these 3 takeaways here, I wish I had done these 3 things different, taken more time, made it better for my wife, and then actually poured into people, just developed some spiritual rhythms with others in relationship. So, okay.
Yeah.
Brother, unless you got something else to add, I'm going to wrap this up. Okay.
No, beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do
Enjoy the conversation today.
No, it's good. I hope this has been helpful to you, the listener. If it has, please subscribe to the podcast. We're coming in here. This is our 2nd episode in season 2. Subscribe, leave us a rating. Please share it. Share it on social media. If you know a church planter, someone who's just on the field, someone preparing to go, again, put this in their hands. Let them listen to it. Let it be at least, again, Isaac and I are still learning. I'm definitely still learning. So this isn't the end all, but man, it'd be a good conversation starter, perhaps for them and their team or their sending agency or whatever. I hope it would be a help to them. Again, my name is Logan Wolf. I'm joined today by Isaac Morin. This is Everything I Did Wrong as a Church Planter, a 1,000,000-part series.